All right. Today we are going to be talking once again with Gamal Hennessy. We talked to him uh, sometime end of last year because he was doing a Kickstarter about focusing on stuff for independent creators. So I thought it'd be great to have him back on, maybe see how that ended up, and see what's new in the world that he's been dealing with independent creators. So without taking up too much more of his time, I'm going to go ahead and bring him in, and we'll catch up. How's it going?
Pretty good, sir. How are you? How have you been doing?
Oh, hanging in there, hanging in there. How did your how did the Kickstarter finally end up? And well, how did anything you learned from that experience?
Well, the Kickstarter ended, I want to say, in September, and we got very good responses from that successful campaign. It was, I guess we were 600% funded, so we got about 700 backers who either got the digital version, the print version, or we had a special consulting tier where people could get a 1 hour consultation to discuss the specifics of their book and their project. So that actually went over very well. And I also, because the Kickstarter itself was so successful, I actually landed a literary agent who is now shopping the book to publishers to get that book into, because the way it's structured, the book actually would fit very well in college and university courses for anyone who's learning cartooning or anyone who's getting an MFA in English and is thinking they want to get into comics once they get out of school. This, having that book and having that foundation will actually help them understand and navigate the industry once they get out. So that's we're actually still in the process of securing that deal, but at the same time, I've started working on the next book because the first book focused specifically on independent comic book publishing. The next book's going to focus on freelance comic book publishing because the business models and the economic incentives are slightly different when you don't own the underlying intellectual property. So that's going to be the next book, and it should come out, I want to say, by October 2022.
Very nice. And now that you have an agent, are you going to be kickstarting that one, or are you just kind of
I,
see how things go?
yeah, I'm assuming that once the agent comes in, because the first book that we're trying to get placed with the publisher is part of an overall 5 book series. So I'm assuming the publisher will actually pick up the entire series. And I'm under the impression that because it's not a comic book, it's a book about comics, it won't be kickstarted because that's not the general business model for a book like this.
Mhm.
But because so many other books are being, kickstarted, even if they're with a major publisher, it could happen. But I'm not assuming that that's going to be the route that the next book will take.
I was just curious because you see,
Hmm.
with the success of the Kickstarter, there's definitely a lot of people out there that are interested in what you have to say about being an independent creator.
Absolutely. It's the kind of thing where I think they're not mutually exclusive. You can use the Kickstarter as your kind of big splash launch event, but there's also that long tail once the Kickstarter is over of distributing your book in various channels wherever the specific type of reader wants to read it. So you could do both. It just depends on what the publisher ultimately wants to do.
Well, that's good to hear. Hopefully I'll be able to check it out. I mean, I can't create a comic book, but it was just the whole business side of the thing just kind of intrigues me, seeing that side of the industry.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that
So
a lot of. Go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it's the kind of thing that a lot of people don't really think about, even when they're getting into comics, because most of the people who are in comics, they are in it because they love the medium, they grew up on comics, they, you know, they see themselves as creative people, not necessarily as a a small business owner or an independent publisher. So they don't necessarily want to deal with the accounting or the marketing or the sales or the distribution. But if you don't deal with those pieces, it's very difficult to have your creative work reach the right people and be successful on a financial basis.
Yeah. Totally understandable. So, I know that you created a group on Facebook for the business of comic book publishing, and it's kind of, you know, just a place for independent creators and professionals to kind of collaborate. What what's come out of that that's kind of been of interest to you? Because I mean, I saw the maybe a couple months ago somebody you posted or somebody posted about a app that some guy created for creators to kind of figure out where the cons are and what their expenses would be and how they can gauge, you know, what money. I guess now that cons are, you know, going to be back in some form.
Well, that story, the particular story, was that came from a startup technology journal, and basically it was a comic book creator who was also an app developer who realized that every person, whether you're a publisher or you want to be an artist alley or anything like that, it is a very haphazard process to figure out what cons are going on, where they are, how much it's going to cost to get there, how much merchandise or product you're going to need to sell to justify that trip from your own business. So he is in the process of creating an app that's going to kind of handle all of that for creators, and it doesn't matter what level of creator that you are. And because I try to track all the different trends that are going on in the industry, that story popped up on my radar and I shared it with the group. And it's one of several things that have popped up in the last year where a lot of different aspects of the industry are trying to adapt to the new situation. Whether it's you're talking about the changes in distribution with a lot of publishers leaving Diamond and people being unsure where that situation is going to go, to things like this app and conventions going virtual or being in person and being delayed or coming back, and were people not really sure about that. Things like the NFT issue has come up and people are trying to understand how that impacts them, and does it impact them, and what they even think or feel about it. So, and those are just three different examples about how the industry of comics is actually changing on a constant basis. And even if you've been in the industry for a while, you have to kind of pull your head up from your desk every once in a while just to see what's going on, so you understand the business that you're in and how it's changing. And what I try to do with this group and the other things that I'm doing, like my newsletter, is to supplement the book. Because once I finish writing the book, literally the day after, something in the industry will change and it's not in the book. The book is now old. So you want to have a situation where the book can give you a foundation, but you keep feeding people the information that they need and the ideas and concepts that they need to stay current and relevant within the industry. And that's the purpose of the Facebook group.
And that was another kind of big announcement since we've last talked, was Marvel kind of not really breaking with Diamond, but kind of going with another distribution, you know, kind of following what DC did at the beginning of the, well, DC kind of just totally separated themselves.
Yep, and a lot of other publishers followed along with them.
So, yeah, I mean, do you see that, from your professional opinion, if you can, see that as a plus for maybe smaller publishers to come in and fill that void with say Diamond?
It is
Or
possible.
is,
The thing about Diamond is it requires, I believe it requires a certain amount of scale for it to make sense for Diamond to bring in independent publishers and smaller publishers and give them focus relative to Marvel or DC. Originally, when Diamond became the sole distributor for the direct market, it had an incentive of actually pushing the top 5, top 10 publishers, and everyone else got significantly less attention and less focus. Now, Diamond could, if this is they're going to be their new business model, redirect their focus towards independence, but each independent may not, from their perspective, justify the cost relative to how many books each one is going to sell to make that viable for them. Because so many independent creators are either going through Kickstarter, or they're selling direct, or they're going through like an Ingram or a Publisher's Random House, it's going to be very interesting to see how Diamond adjusts both relative to the direct market and the individual comic book shops, and the independent creators and smaller publishers, to see if they could actually rebuild their business without the top 5, top 10 publishers, as their exclusive partners.
and I know that you wrote a piece just the other day on the website about the comic distribution debate, and so I found that was another another interesting topic that I found just kind of lurking on the Facebook group.
We try to keep it fresh every week.
Yeah. And I know we are kind of talking about this a little bit before we started the show, but one of the things that is come up recently is NFTs, and maybe we can, if you'd like, we can have you can come back and we can probably devote an entire show to NFTs, and because I have some friends who are who like myself sometimes collect original artwork, so I think just kind of a broad overview at this time. And I saw that you sent me the link, and I really want to read that too. But kind of give us a broad overview about NFTs and what they possibly hold for the future.
Well, the thing about NFTs and technology like NFTs is that they attempts to deal with an issue that was almost completely in the realm of analog and physical means before. So artists, like in Artist Alley at conventions, were doing commissions, and they were doing commissions of trademark characters from other publishers. So Marvel, DC, you had hundreds of creators in Artist Alley every convention doing commissions and getting paid, which is technically it's technically an infringement of a copyright, infringement of a trademark. But there was no incentive from a financial standpoint for the larger companies to kind of crack down on this. In fact, it would be seen as a negative PR move to try to stop commissions in Artist Alley, at least from my perspective. And what the thing about NFTs is, the amount of money that is potentially on the table makes it a much bigger financial incentive for a publisher to want to crack down. It also makes it much easier to kind of track and go after people, because you can have a system set up where you don't have someone roaming Artist Alley looking for commissions. Someone sitting in their office looking for who might be using the Suicide Squad or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in an NFT. And the other piece of it is that if artists and other comic creators are trying to use NFTs to supplement their income because they feel like the page rates they're getting is not viable for them to have a sustainable lifestyle, the publishers have to decide, well, how are they going to treat that, and what are they going to do in terms of giving the artists an ability to make more revenue, making more revenue for themselves because they see it as another revenue stream to supplement sales numbers in actual comics that might not be where they are. So that's going to be a choice for every comic book publisher, not just the big 10, but everyone else. Even if you're an independent publisher and you're coming out with a book and you sign on a freelance artist, you have to decide for yourself, well, how are you going to treat NFTs? Is this going to be something that you're going to use as a negotiation point? So you reduce their page rate a little bit, but then tell them they can go out and sell an NFT. And you have to also consider, as part of your business, the environmental impact, because based on the power it takes to create an NFT and to sell an NFT might be something that you're not comfortable with, especially in an era of climate change. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it, depending on who you are, what your position is, what your goal is, and how you will actually relate to this technology and other technologies that come through, because it's not going to end with NFTs. There's going to be something else later on that someone else is going to create that's going to raise these similar issues. And you have to be able to look at the issue, understand how it impacts you and your business, and then make a decision based on that impact.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's move on. Just because it's still blows my mind. But I know that you are also the vice president of content for Global Comics. Is that correct?
Yes, I work with Global Comics. I develop a lot of content for the educational aspects of the business. So what happens is Global Comics is not like other digital distribution platforms where you just throw up your comic and they say, good luck. We hope you get some eyeballs on this comic. They actually wanted to teach comic creators how to market their comic, how to finance their comic, how to the best practices for creating a Kickstarter campaign, how to actually manage your project once you decide you're going to bring in people to start making a comic. So because a lot of those things are things that I have talked about and discussed in my work developing the book, it brought me in to help kind of shepherd that effort. So I write a lot of their blog content and handle a lot of their webinar development to make sure that people get a hands-on feel of how they can use something like Global Comics to distribute their book and actually get the most exposure possible for it.
Okay, and I know that you're currently doing a charity anthology, which I saw the press release, and so I thought I'd bring that up, and I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
Sure. What we wanted to do as the pandemic reached one of its highest points is we wanted to try to create a situation, especially since during the pandemic so many comic book shops and so many other businesses had to shut down and their revenue was completely cut off, is we brought together a group of creators to try to pull together and make a book that could be used so the revenue from that book could be used to actually donate to charities that the creators themselves chose. So Alex Segura, Frank Thierry, Sina Grace, a lot of very well-known and high-profile creators donated their time to put together this anthology, and they told Global Comics which charities they wanted to actually donate to. So what Global Comics is going to do is they put the book on the site. I think it's going to be released next week in 7 installments, and each installment is going to the proceeds from that, 100% of the proceeds from that are going to go to the individual charities, whether it's there's organizations for the COVID response for nurses, several comic book shops, transgender rights groups. So there's a wide range of different groups that are being supported through this one comic. And Global Comics is actually not taking any proceeds from the project. We put the project together, distributing it on the website, and then when the money comes in, it will go straight to the creators, and the creators will donate that money to the charities that they listed of their choice. So we're hoping to actually get quite a few eyeballs and interest on this book, just to let people know that there's a way for comic book creators to help the organizations that are important to them by doing what they do best, which is basically just making great stories in comics.
That's awesome. And as I was writing up the press release, it does sound like a very interesting anthology, and it seems like you've got a lot of great creators that have some very good charities that they're working for.
Exactly.
So I don't want to keep you too long, because I know I try not to keep these long. Plus, I know that you're busy. So where can people find your stuff, or like social media? Where can they? And I'll include the links in the show notes. But where can they go to check out the upcoming anthology and all that?
Yeah. If you want to check out the Resilience Anthology, Creators Against COVID, you can just go to globalcomics.com. That's all one word. And then in the search box, you just type in resilience. To find my personal stuff, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn if you just search for Gamal Hennessy. That's GamalHennessy. If you're a creator who's actually looking to get a free consultation about the legal or business aspects of the comics you're working on, or the projects that you happen to be involved in, you can just reach out to me at Creative Contract Consulting. That's all one word. And there's a contact form there for a free consultation that you can set up. And we would just have a conversation about what it is that you're working on and how I might be able to help you.
That's awesome. And people should definitely, if they're doing doing a comic book, they should definitely take advantage of that. So I want to thank you for taking the time to talk. And if you're interested, maybe you could come back and we could have like a roundtable discussion about NFTs, because like I said, there's a lot to unpack, and we'll set that up off show if you're interested.
Absolutely. Just let me know.
All right. Well, again, thank you for coming. And we'll be in touch. And it was great catching up with you, and hope you're staying safe and healthy. And, maybe one of these days we'll get to meet in person, and that'd be totally awesome.
Exactly. When we all go back to the comic book con.
All right. Well, thanks. And we'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.